So how do you go and handle loss? I've seen people handle loss differently in a lot of different situations, and there's multiple levels to loss and multiple different types of loss, so I guess we should dive into that first. And there's 3 different forms of loss, which one is death, 2 is physically losing something like your phone or your keys, and 3 is losing in something like a game, like losing a basketball game, losing a football game, losing in a video game. Those are 3 different forms, and the one that impacts people the most and is the hardest for people is losing someone with death, which obviously makes sense because it's the most detrimental change, because people also experience loss through moving away from people. Like some people will move away from their family and it's like, oh, it kind of feels like they're dead because you don't see them or you don't talk to them, or maybe you didn't have the best relationship to begin with, so then you move away and it's like complete contact cut off. And people handle that very poorly because a lot of people are really attached to those old people or attached to those old things, and I've just seen this happen over and over again, and that's what honestly inspired me to even make something like this. So I can give you my personal experience with each level of loss. So first we'll just start with the easiest one, which is like losing something physically. The most important thing I've lost physically was a wallet, and I say the most important thing because it's not that important. You could always get a new wallet, but it's like what was inside the wallet is what mattered. Like I had my ID, my cards, I had everything, so I had to go renew that and redo everything. So it was less of like a loss, it was just a pain in the ass because I had to pick that back up. So that one's not that important. So then there's losing at something like a game. So I would experience loss a lot in basketball. Like I was okay at basketball. I used to play 2 years ago. I was like, I wasn't really good. So I would lose a lot, and our team would lose a lot as a byproduct of me being bad and the team kind of sucking and all that stuff. So we would lose, and I would always experience that loss. And over time, it just gives you like the loser effect, which is just like when you're so far down and the momentum is so far shifted in the other direction, it's so much harder to actually get a win, because there's the winner's effect and there's the loser's effect. When you're winning, you're just going to keep winning. And once you get wins, your confidence goes up. But when you get losses and you take losses, this shouldn't happen, but automatically, just as a byproduct, your confidence and feeling of motivation or momentum will it'll just go down over and over and over again. So that was the loss I experienced basically every week in basketball for a year. And then experiencing loss in the form of death, which is what a lot of people my age actually don't experience. Some do. I have people close to me who have lost their grandparents, they've lost siblings, they've lost cousins, they've lost people to cancer, they've lost people to gun violence, all that type of stuff. But for me personally, my experience with death was with my dad when I was around 9 years old, and that was very unexpected. It's always going to be unexpected loss, and that sense of death, you are lucky if it is expected. Like if you are given a date, like not to say lucky, like it sucks no matter what, but if you are given a time to say goodbye and a time to prep, you can never prep for it, but if you're given a time to warm up and prep for that type of loss, you are considered lucky just based on the fact that you're able to say goodbye. You're able to enjoy the times that you have left with that person and like truly appreciate what happens. But 90% of the time is going to be completely unexpected, whether that's through gun violence, whether a drunk driver hits someone, whether they just have something that goes wrong in their body and then you don't have enough money to keep up the hospital bills and they have to pull the plug. Like that type of stuff really does happen. It's always going to be unexpected. And the most important thing is just like not letting something like that define you, because I thought I heard my name get called. Either way, you can't let something like that define you, because you guys would have never even known that I've dealt with that level of loss on multiple levels. Like there's a lot more that has happened, but it doesn't come out in the way I speak or the way I talk or the way I interact with anyone. Like no one would ever know that happened to me unless I willingly told someone, because I don't reflect that negative energy and I don't reflect like I had a hard life. It's just about it happened and it molded who I am today, and I wouldn't say I would change it just based on the fact that you can't change it, for one. Like you can't get in the mindset of like, oh, I wish this was different, or I wish this was different in this sense, or I wish I did this before that happened, because you can't do that and you never will be able to do that. So you have to just come to terms with the fact. Like acceptance of it happening is so important, because you need to know how to detach yourself emotionally from hard things, and that comes with accepting the fact that the hard things has happened. So that's just what I've learned with that. I mean, it's been 10 years for me, so I can sit here and say, oh yeah, it was easy for me to get over it. But it never truly disappears. Like, it's always going to be like, oh yeah, I lost that person, or I lost that thing. But it is important to understand that you can't accept that it happened, so it isn't like dictating your life. The sun is setting quick, so let's try to finish this last part, which is the most important, which is how do you actually handle the loss? Like, what can you do to get past it and move past it? So the most cliche one is time heals. Time always does heal. Like, over time, things will get easier, things will get better. Like I said, this happened for me 10 years ago, so I can sit here and talk about it like nothing happened. But 9 years ago, when I wouldn't have been able to speak to you because I would have been like 10. But 9 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to sit here so confidently and give you the exact way to overcome it, because I hadn't overcome it at that point. It impacted me for a large part of my childhood. It was always a problem, but as I got older and like actually grew a brain, like I actually had a brain I could use, I was able to just master the emotion and master the feeling and master my brain, so it wasn't impacting my life. So you, for one, have to get a time, and like I mentioned earlier, you have to have acceptance for it. Like, if I don't want to say the wrong thing here because it's a little offensive, but I know people who have had a loss on a different level from me. They've had loss, let's take the most lighthearted example. Like, they lost their dog. Losing your dog sucks. I've lost multiple pets. It's always a tragedy, but people will always buy more pets because they accept the fact that that pet was gone, and they enjoyed the times they had with the pet, and then they get a new pet. So it's not to say that you have to go out and get something new. That's like the least important part of the situation. But it's coming to terms with the fact, oh, I accept this. Like, some people look at pictures of their old dog and they're like, oh, I miss Bailey. But it's like they moved on past it and they didn't let it dictate their life. So like, you have to have that same mindset with loss in all aspects. And I don't just mean death. Let's say you lose a basketball game, because that's the only example I could give. It's the only thing I really ever was losing at was that over and over again. So let's say you lose a basketball game. Like, you can't let the loss down spiral the momentum, because if you don't come to the fact and like just accept that you lost, then the next game's going to suck too, and the next game's going to suck too. So it's like, if you don't accept death loss, like, the next day's going to suck, and the next day's going to suck, and you're going to be like, oh, where is this person? How do I get back with this person? How do I get this person back? Which is honestly just a dangerous spiral that will ruin your mental health. And then also, having spiritual beliefs does help with death forms of loss, because you understand that death isn't the end. Like, they went somewhere. They're not just in the ground sleeping. Like, they went somewhere better. And even if they were a bad person or whatever, I guess if you care about them dying, you probably didn't think they were a bad person. But let's say the person was objectively a bad person, you still know that hopefully they were able to move on past that in the next life and actually either be reincarnated or go to wherever you go. I'm not sure. I'm not fully stationed in my religious beliefs, so I won't say heaven or hell or anything, but they were able to move on past where they were in their physical form, because that is a real thing. And honestly, in the most recent years, because this whole death loss thing was really impacting me up until like 3 years ago, honestly, like, it was still pretty prominent in my life, was me realizing that the universe is a thing, and that energy is a thing, and that all things pass on once they die. So it was like a relief for me. It wasn't just like that person is permanently gone. It's like they're gone here, but energy-wise, they're not. Like, their energy still exists somewhere, because it can't just disappear. It doesn't just evaporate, so it goes somewhere. And yeah, I mean, it's a really important message, and a lot of people have to understand that, because loss is going to happen to everyone. Like, your parents are going to die if you're lucky enough to survive past them, which is really the goal. Your grandparents are going to die, your siblings are going to die, your friends are eventually going to die, your pets are going to die. Like, everything is going to die eventually. So it's like, you just have to be prepared and understand how to accept something like that. So when the time comes, you don't let it ruin your whole life. Because I know grown adults who knew these things were going to happen. Like, their parents were going to die. You're 50 years old. Your parents are probably going to die unless they live to 308, which would be awesome. But with our health and our society, nobody's living past 90, like the majority of people. So it's like, your parents are going to die. They didn't take care of their health. They get old. People get old and they pass on. So it's like, you need to be ready to accept that fact when it comes. Because I know 50, 40, 35-year-olds, like, their parents die, and it's like their whole life just ended. Like, their own life, they let that ruin their whole life. Like, they didn't get any inspiration to work harder, to honor the name, honor the last name, honor the family. Like their parents died and they were done. So it's like, you cannot let that be you. And this is a harsh, deep topic, and I'm sure you could go way more onto the psychological side, which I'm not an expert in that by any means. I do content on social media, so I'm not going to talk about psychoanalytics, but it's an important message coming from someone that has experienced it, because only people that have experienced high-level loss can help you through it. So the bottom line, and the last thing I'll say, is don't go to a therapist. They're not going to help you. They're going to give you coping mechanisms that aren't drugs, or they might be drugs. They might put you on drugs, but they're going to just give you coping mechanisms that don't heal the process, but just kind of suppress it. So don't do that. If you're young, you will handle it. Give it 2 years, and the loss will still be there, but you'll be able to live a normal life again. So that's the end of this one. I want to do one of these long forms at least 3 days a week. We could probably do another one, like a Loom style video, but it won't be Loom. It'll just be more on content, not death. So I put on the fancy clothes to talk about this one today. So if this helped anyone out, please subscribe. Go check me out on Instagram. I have a lot more followers over there, so you might think I'm a little more legit. And yeah, we'll talk again soon. Peace.